So, so what's this building community? So that's kind of like become like a buzzword lately with social media and marketing, like building community. So if someone was to ask you, well, what does that mean exactly, building community, and how do I do that? So what would you say to somebody for that?
I would say that you are building community when you are interacting with people and kind of eliciting a relationship between the two of you, right? I think for a lot of people that was really easily done during COVID because we were all online.
Right.
So I think like Clubhouse was great for that. Instagram DMs were great for that. People would go live together very often.
And there used to be bots. Remember the bots back in the day with Instagram? You could hire these bots and they would go like other people's stuff. But so
did you do that? That was really annoying. If you
no,
did that.
I did not do that.
Wait, stop. I don't listen. Maybe I shouldn't say it. I don't want to give people ideas.
No, no.
So I'll tell you off camera something that happened to me this week that I was pissed about.
Oh, no, I never got into the bots. And back when bots were a thing, I really wasn't even into Instagram, to be quite honest with you. I just wasn't quite into it and had no idea it was going to be this big, massive thing that was important to business. So with that, I'll lead in. Let's stay with community building for a minute.
Yeah.
So community building is actually not just posting, right? Posting content that your followers and people you're trying to attract want to see. Would you agree that community building is going one step further? It's actually engaging.
Yes. So you're exactly right, in my opinion. So I think that when you're posting, what you're doing is creating brand awareness. Think of that as a brand awareness campaign from a marketing standpoint. When you are building community, think of it as nurturing your audience. So this is when Shay Danielle is voice noting you what's wrong with your procedure and telling you to stop crying. That's community. Right? Because it's
getting to know your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's endearing from either the client or the student to the person who's speaking to them. So while you might not be earning money from it, and it does take a lot of time, I hear students say that all the time, like, I don't want to answer 50 people in my DMs a day.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, someone else is going to, and that's who they're going to choose to spend their money with because it's who they like. It's who was nice to them. If you only talk to people when you want money from them, they don't really want to talk to you.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think
no one has done this more masterfully than you.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Building community?
For sure, because when we first started out as, all the microbladers, I'm speaking for the people kind of in my generation of permanent makeup, a lot of the old talking heads were not interested. And they felt like you didn't pay your dues and you don't know anything and microblading's a fad and it's going to fade out. And you didn't, you took one class, you don't know anything. You shouldn't even be working on skin. How can you start training people after 2 years? Which agree, but not Taryn Darling. Taryn Darling said, come one, come all, come and sit at my table. I'll show you how to do things. I'll show you how to read needle packages. My first class, I learned a lot and I don't begrudge her in any way, shape or form. I don't want it to sound like that, but that was one thing that was missing from my training. I didn't learn how to read needle packaging. So I go back to the studio I was working at the time, and they had taken all these needles out of boxes and put them into pencil holders so they could organize their drawer. And I knocked one of them over. And listen, I'm pregnant, first time ever. I'm very emotional. So I started crying and I was like, I can't figure out where they go. And I ruined them. They're like, you don't know how to read needle packaging? You're not helping. Well, guess who taught me how to read needle packaging? Taryn Darling.
I did. Yay. Well, that's awesome. I remember those days, and my thoughts were, they're here. They're a part of our industry. And I kind of look, not that I agree with everything that happens in PMU or think everything taking place in PMU is healthy. There's some things that can certainly be done better, especially when it comes to education.
Sure.
But if you chose to be in my industry, You notice I say my industry.
I did. I was just thinking, wow, she's a big dick. If you chose to enter my industry.
Yeah, which is a big, beautiful, magical place. And it's where I found belonging. It's where I found myself. It's where I became who I am today. So I love permanent makeup. And I just assume that anybody coming into permanent makeup are coming in for the same reasons that I did. They may differ here and there, but they're coming in because they want to do beautiful work. They want the freedom of being an entrepreneur, and something about PMU attracted to them, the artistry of it. It could be other things, and they just want to do beautiful work. That's the way I just kind of looked at it. And if you're going to be in this industry, and as long as I'm a part of it, I don't really care about your background. I don't. There's a lot of things I don't care about. But if I can help you, then I'm going to help you. So that's just always been it. I've always been not judgmental in a lot of areas where you see a lot of judgment.
A lot.
And
where do we see it? Social media.
So
I understand why people are hesitant to post on social, because they don't want to hear. Yeah, they don't want. And right now, the fad at this very moment, end of September, beginning of October, is that there's this new group on Facebook. Are you in it?
I'm not sure. What's the name of it? I don't know. Okay.
But it's meant to bash people. It's meant for bashing, and it says so in the name. It calls them a name. So that's the only post that you see in there. Yeah, is people saying, and I'm sitting here going through it, looking at it like, first of all, I hope I never made anyone feel the way a lot of these people feel. And secondly, I pray that I don't see my name there, not because I don't think the business will survive. I think that it will, because they're much, much, much bigger and more important names with many, many more people angry at them.
Yeah.
But who are still making money. But that would really hurt me. This is my life's work, and I really, truly care. So let's dial that back 10 shades and say that you're a brand new artist who just started posting your work, and somebody shows up and starts saying like, oh, you screwed this up, or that's ugly, or whatever. So I can see why people would be scared, right? It's a double-edged sword.
It certainly is. Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly can be. I even get a little nervous sometimes, because I'm opinionated. I have my opinions about, lots of different things. But I'm always really careful, Victoria, and it comes naturally. It's not that I want to. I think there's a way to express your opinion and being true to yourself, which is I always want to be, and I am. And do it in a way that doesn't offend people that do things differently or may not agree with me. I think there's a way to express yourself in that way where it can still be all inclusive. Like, I have my opinions on the podcast, but I think I do a pretty good job. And I learned this from my dad, to express and cite your opinions, why behind it, why you feel this way, but say in a way that's not offensive to those that do things differently or believe differently. Because, just because I have opinion about something, I certainly am the first to admit that my way is not necessarily the right way or the only way. It's my way. And people
that's maturity.
Yes. And if I'm interested in other people's ways, then I assume people are interested in my ways. It would get a little boring if you sat and just kind of talked and learned with people and artists that do things the way you do. I think we learn more, having conversations with artists that do things very differently, and it's interesting,
I do. I mean, I was just at Woolop USA last weekend, and there were, 20 people in the room doing demos. And I provide all those same services. I do nano brows, I do areola, I do lips, I do liner. But as I'm walking around the room watching people from all over do things, I'm thinking, oh, interesting. I never used that needle for this procedure before, or in that way before, or I didn't realize like carbons versus iron oxides for this specific stroke or like interesting.
Yeah.
Someone telling me like, oh, I would only use really watery carboned pigments for this specific stroke. That's how I'm getting this pixel. Oh, interesting, because I couldn't get that pixel with that same needle. Now I'm seeing it. So I think it's not that there's only one way to do things. And so my opinion shouldn't reign supreme over anyone else's, but that also doesn't mean that I'm wrong. But I think that's maturity, because certainly when I was younger, I was very opinionated and very loud all the time. I was very loud and very wrong. Not even just in permanent makeup, just in life. Like, oh, why would you do it that way? That's not the way that things should be done. Or why do you have that opinion? That's incorrect. Actually, two things can be true at the same time. And I think that's why the older you get, the quieter you get, because you've seen some things and you're like, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how that works out.
In permanent makeup, I think several things can be true at the same time, right?
And half the time we don't even have the full information anyway, especially on the internet.
There's a lot of different avenues and ways to get to a beautiful result in this industry. And I think that's like, what's so, great and interesting about this industry. But yet, there's always going to be those people out there. If you're not doing it their way, or you express, opinions that differ from theirs, they get angry. It upsets them. They get angry about that. And I've never really quite understood that. I just don't really understand that.
It's not for you to understand. It's a personal thing within that person. They need to go to therapy. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I know. And probably someone like that, probably they're not a very happy person, and imagine what their personal life is. That's usually what goes off in my mind when I see someone.
If you're just hating on someone on Facebook over and over again, leaving comment after comment, you want to argue with them for an hour and a half over one picture that they post on Facebook.
Yeah.
Honey, have some kids or something. If you want to argue with somebody, have a kid. Oh my God.
Yeah. My whole thing, I've always said, like, no one sets out and sits down in their chair with a client with the intent to do a bad eyebrow. No one does. No one does. That doesn't excuse, lack of education, lack of training, lack of, everything that it takes, to be skillful. But I don't know. I just have empathy for people, while at the same time having high standards for.
Exactly. So if you're working with integrity, don't worry about it.
Right. Exactly.
If you're working with integrity, you know that you did your research, you know that you tried your best, you know that you're learning along the way, you know that you're taking really good trainings, you have good resources. Don't worry about it. You're going to do well in the industry. You will.
100%.